Welcome to the only show bringing cops and the community together for some real talk and some real listening. This is uncut. This is uncensored. This is Black and Blue Live. Hey, what up, Black and Blue fam? What's going on? Welcome to another Black and Blue Live. My name is Dale. I am the host. It has been a minute since I've done this with my girl Lyzzy, so let me bring her on. She is the one, the only, the incomparable Lyzzy Green.
What's up, dude? I'm back. I missed you all. I missed you.
Yes. What's going on, fam? How you been?
Man, doing good. Doing good. I'm excited to be back. I'm excited to just share today. Today's gonna be a good day.
Yes,
Like an
yes,
Ice
yes.
Cube. Ice Cube, good day. But I ate bacon.
You don't like bacon?
No, I ate it. That's what I'm
Oh, you
saying.
ate
Cube
bacon.
said we
Oh,
don't
you
eat
ate.
bacon.
Yeah.
I'm eating the pork
Yeah.
and the
You go.
hog.
Yes, yes. I don't know if Cube's still on that tip like he was back then, but hey, because my brother looked like he could eat though, but it's it's all good. I
Right,
love me some
right.
Cube though.
He
Let,
might or might not.
yeah, I love me some Cube. Hey, so what's going on, Black and Blue fam? Like we said, it's been a minute, and today we gonna do a little something different than we normally do. We gonna take questions from you guys. You guys sent in some earlier. You guys can continue to send them in as well. If you want to do that, come on, check us out right now. We are live on Facebook. We are live on YouTube. We are live on LinkedIn, and we are live on Twitter. So check out all those platforms that we are on, and you can send in some questions. And our questions today have to do with you. So let me get that off the screen there. You can put this back on the screen. Where we at? I'm pushing so many daggone buttons. Here we go. Question is, what do you want to know about law enforcement? I know there's something out there y'all want to know, so we will definitely talk about that. We got some questions. Real quick, is this? He said Warren Stewart on YouTube said Cube is Muslim, no bacon for him. Yes, I'm saying I knew that back in the day. I didn't know he was still
Appreciate that,
Muslim.
Warren.
Yeah, we appreciate you, Warren. I didn't know he was still Muslim, but hey, Cube, my guy, man. He's my number one rapper of all time. So I am not hating on him. I just love the way he flows. You know, he always paints a picture in your mind. Him and Luda, they paint pictures in your
That's
mind. You
right.
can just close your eyes and see what they're talking about. But I digress. We not talking about our favorite rappers. We gonna talk about questions of law enforcement. Lyzzy and I are both active police officers. We kind of want to stay that way for at least for a little bit. So we will screen your questions. Like I said in a few of the posts, nothing is off the table, but you must remain respectful. So we will keep it that way. And but again, we will keep it 100. Ain't that right, Lyzzy?
Listen, all the time, I will not compromise my integrity or character for nobody. Not
For
never.
real. Facts, facts. So we will get to all your questions. Feel free to send them in, and we will get to them. But there's a couple here that were already sent in, so let me bring up those without any further ado. Here's our first one. Here is bring that up. We had an Edwin. Let me bring down that lower third, which is right there. Edwin on Twitter said, "Do USA cops still have qualified immunity to not have to render um, physical first aid to their gunshot victims after using deadly force?" He says he just phoned it in for EMS or just phoned it in for EMS to arrive later on the scene. We've seen those questions before where or those situations before where we got in a shootout. The first one that comes to mind is what happened with the LA shootout with the Hollywood shootout, the North Hollywood shootout with the bank
Hmm.
robbers. After they took them down, after that long engagement,
Right.
they sat there and waited for paramedics to arrive on scene, and they didn't render any aid, and then those two guys ended up dying, and I suppose their family sued for that.
Lots of
So
lawsuits.
yes, yep, lots of lawsuits on that. So that's basically where that stemmed from. What do you think about that one, Lyzzy?
So I think this is kind of a series of questions. So the first part is I think it depends on the situation. In other words, if I'm responding to an active shooter and I have to engage perhaps maybe those who are causing harm, but there may be more than one. I may not be the officer at the point that I eliminate the threat, rendering the first aid if there's still a threat there are other threats going on. So it's not necessarily negligence, but there'll be another team maybe that comes in behind me that does that, right? You have your contact teams, your rescue teams, your medics, and then there in California, at least, our firefighters are now training to go into active shooter situations, as you've seen in a lot of situations where
Yes.
um, there were a lot of casualties and a lot of poor responses, not necessarily because of intentionality, but just poor training. So there's that, right? So there's that part. There's also the part where I am engaging a known suspect or a known threat, and it's that, and there aren't any other ones. And in that process, in the engagement, the suspect is injured or is hit, is shot or
Right.
whatever. Per our policy in California, we're supposed to render aid. So I can't speak
Yeah.
for USA. I can speak for California, and it's really a department. It's more broken down to department wide standards and policies. But for the most part, I would say California is pretty uniform. You're going to get out there and you're going to render first aid. Now, qualified immunity is different, in that with qualified immunity, it protects the officer from lawsuit as well as their well being from lawsuit when I am operating within the scope of my job.
That's the
Um,
operative
and
phrase,
that's
within the
that's that's
scope
yeah, with
of.
the scope of
Yes.
my job, right? So within the scope of my job, if I choose to render aid and this person does not survive, I cannot be sued because if in my process of doing CPR I did it incorrectly, or there are those other things. Now, if I do something that's out of the training or out of department policy, then I put myself at risk for termination, thus other things. But qualified immunity really doesn't apply necessarily to this in the context that I think that it was initially written.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
but
that's
it is
more of
it
a
basically is put in place so that we're not afraid to make hard decisions and do our jobs for the good of the people.
right, right. What that question was really pertaining to more was the Good Samaritan law, which anybody can, can do, can be a part of. And what that means is if you were, if someone is injured and you go to render aid, for CPR, someone's choking or something at a restaurant, and you someone says you did it wrong. Well, you can't be sued because Good Samaritan, you're kind of covered up, because if he were to do nothing, he would definitely would have died. So yeah, so but what we're talking about here, qualified immunities, yeah, just like what Lyzzy said, is within the scope of our duty. If we do something, we got to make that hard decision, and it turns out to be wrong, we can't be sued for it because we were acting in good faith within the scope of our job. So yeah, that's a good question there. Good question there. Next
Great
question we had.
question.
Yes, next question we had here. Let me bring that up. Uh, from Winter Emily on, I believe that was on Facebook. She says, I want to know what new things are being done for mental health of officers. Would there be an annual psych evaluation?
Ooh.
Yes. Yeah, that's well,
Ooh.
we kind of talked about that a little bit.
We
Sometimes
did.
yes, our job is stressful, and we know that, and we see things that the normal public doesn't see uh, in their whole lifetime, and we can see that within a year. So, especially on larger agencies, L.A., New York,
In a month.
Chicago, yeah, you go down to South L.A. and they seeing things that you don't want to see. So, are mental evaluations policy, or is it state law? It's definitely not state law, at least here in California. That's all we can speak on, right? Does it
Right.
need to be? That's another story.
So for me, I think that as officers, I think in society there's such a stigma with the term mental health or mental wellness, um, and a lot of it is ignorance, and really just cultural biases to understanding. I think because we've seen so much and we're seeing such an increase in violence or an increase in people not being able to navigate trauma, or just heaviness in life, right? So I think it's now becoming to the forefront about mental health and and mental wellness,
Yeah.
or whole wellness. That I think, at least in our agency, they're starting to make it a priority. I just don't think that they're really committing to the way that it needs to be done to do it, because officers, um, there's a saying we say, this is the hardest job to get and the easiest one to lose.
Mm-hmm.
And literally, so there's a lot of fear that if I talk to someone, that it's going to be used against me. It's not going to be confidential. And that there, it's based on fear, but it's also based on, there have been politics where people have been in situations and what was done for one wasn't necessarily done for the other, and there have been
Right.
backlash to that. So there would have to be compliance things, but there are programs within different agencies to try and reach out, because officers have the highest suicide rate. We have
Yes.
high alcoholism, high divorce rates, high rates of addiction, because we try and manage stress or trauma in a way that we try to control what really isn't controllable, right?
Yeah.
And when we're on the scene, we don't get to cry, we don't get to have emotions. We've got to be the steady in the situation. Well, that's got to go somewhere. And so if you
Yeah.
don't have a support system, or you don't have things in place because you've never had to deal with this before, it does take a toll. So I definitely think that needs to happen. I think that there should be an array of mental health specialists, um, because what I may need as an African American, as a woman, as a mother, is not necessarily what you gonna need as a man, as
Right.
African American officer, or what maybe some of our other partners may need as men, as fathers, as divorcees, as someone who's coming from toxic whatever that is. There should be a array of options for us to be able to talk, not a one size fits all, like how they do us when
Sure.
we get injured.
Sure, but should there be at least law law enforcement geared psychologists and therapists that also know about the
Absolutely.
things that we deal with as law enforcement officers, not necessarily as as African American man, African American mother, what have you, just someone
Yes.
who knows the sorts of things that we deal with on the daily.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Because it's
yeah,
different. Not very many people have to face the decision, did I ruin Christmas because I got to take mom or dad to jail and find the kids and put them in foster care?
yeah,
Not very many people have to, you know, get the baby that's deceased because they drown, and then try and comfort and manage a home on just a Monday morning,
yeah.
right? And then go to the next call for service,
Right,
which could be
exactly.
anything from a check fraud to another shooting or a homicide or
Right.
domestic violence, and navigate all that.
That part that people really don't understand as well is just like you just said, we were on one call. Say if it starts at your first call out the shoot, 6 in the morning, you got to deal with a dead baby call. You still got the 12 hours of your shift if you work in patrol. For the most part, they're not just going to let you sit there and just like every agency, every shift is short. They need that body out there, and they really not trying to
Yeah.
have you sit at the station and be in therapy over what
And
you just saw.
woosah.
But you need it. You may
Yeah.
need that.
And not like that, now add that to whatever's going on in your life, period.
Right.
And so you got to navigate the atmosphere of the life that you've now been pulled into, positive, toxic, not positive, negative, and then you still have to take this hat off, these experiences, and then go home and navigate whatever you're dealing with at home, good or bad. You still have to navigate it
Yeah.
and not be triggered. So I do think that there should be a better mental health program and awareness to protect officers. And there are agencies that are doing that, even if it's with breathing, if it's creating groups like I know, especially during the George Floyd, after the shooting, after his murder, um, there were a lot of agencies there were a lot of officers, and particularly officers who had rank, who really reached out to other officers who were traumatized by that.
Mm-hmm.
And in particular, I know like a lot of the African American officers, where they could just talk and kind of vent, because what that murder did was rip off a band-aid from the internal side of things as well as the external side of things,
Yeah.
and that place of being black and blue, right? So that really became a safe place for a lot of people to navigate those things and those emotions and the thoughts and the processes that they went through.
Yep. Yep.
So
That part
great
right there.
question.
Yes. Great question. Thank you. I went to Emily on Facebook. Appreciate that question. Before we move on, again, I want you guys to send in your questions right here again on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, wherever you're watching us right now, send in your questions and we get those on. Yeah, bring them in. We got some lined up that people asked already, and we'll talk about
Yes.
those. In the meantime, bring in your questions, and we will definitely answer those for you. And speaking of that, Lyzzy, you got another question you want to throw out
I
there?
do. All right. So this is from Joel Green. He said, should it be required for police officers to live in the community they protect?
Yeah. Well, interesting question. Depends on where you are protecting, where you're working, right? Say like if you work for
Right.
Beverly Hills PD. I mean, hey,
Yeah, I
I
live
would,
there.
yeah, I live there, but
Maybe. I don't know. I'm gonna
well,
be
yes,
honest. There's
yes,
certain communities
yes.
I don't believe in going where I'm not celebrated or I don't feel welcome or my
That
people
part
didn't
right
feel
there,
welcome, right?
rest.
So
But we all, if we raising a family, you want to live in a safe community. But like you just asked, should you be have stake in that?
required
Yeah, but have a stake in the well being of that
that
community.
part.
Yes.
I think that officers need cultural and I think training needs to go past just tactics and it needs to go past the check mark of I listened to this video or whatever else. You need to not be afraid of the communities you're policing. You need to see value in your communities if you live
Mm-hmm.
there or not. And I think that maybe not so much living there, but maybe there has to be some type of investment, like you gonna do community service here, you gonna get to know the kids, you're gonna get to know the family, or you're going to get involved in a program here. There has to be some kind of stake because the problem is I feel like a lot of times we don't see people as human. Anytime you can debate, and let me just say this, and I'm gonna step on some toes. Anytime you can debate whether or not someone deserved to die based on a past offense or based on um, like you can dehumanize the value of their life based on a criminal history as opposed to their right to due process, their right to justice, or anytime you can minimize that, that's a red flag. You're not seeing them as human. That's a red flag. You dismiss their humanity, their tears. Anytime you can minimize someone's experience just because you didn't go through it or dismiss it because that's not your truth,
Yeah.
that's asinine. It's like a man telling a woman, "I've never experienced childbirth, so therefore it doesn't exist," or the pain of it. You you can't do that. So I think that there has to be cultural competency. There has to be investment in the community. But I don't know that I would want to be required to live in all of the communities I police, rich or not. I want to be where I can be and enjoy that. Because if that's the case, then teachers should do it too because all
Sure.
of us have a
Yeah.
stake in the well-being of people.
Yeah. There were some programs offered by the U.S. government HUD a while back, officer next door, teacher next door programs, where they try to incentivize officers and teachers and first responders to
Hmm.
live in neighborhoods where they worked. Just so again, so that they have a stake in those communities. But what it was you had to live there for 3 years. You had to live there. They actually sent out people to make sure that you lived
To
there, and it
check.
wasn't. Yes, it wasn't an investment property for you. And I know some officers that got in trouble or lost their jobs or what have you because they weren't actually living there. But nonetheless, what that was again trying to have them have a stake in what goes on in that community. But
Right.
problem is, people still did see it as an investment. They did their 3 years and they got out.
Right. And well, not only that, but then we know of officers who did live there and the community didn't want them there and their houses got shot up.
That too.
Like
Yep.
there was the issue, there's a safety issue, especially in some of the communities that we work in or adjacent to. They may not be a part of our community, but we've had contacts and it's not a pro law enforcement, community. And so
Yep.
again, it doesn't build relationship. It creates a bigger barrier
Yep. Yep.
with that, because I'm shoot at my house and think we're gonna be friends.
Yeah.
I mean, they did it
Right.
in Wu
Right.
Tang, but in this real
Yeah.
life, that's different, right?
Yeah.
We're not
Yeah.
getting over that.
Yeah. I mean, it's really complex. If you got a family, um, when you're out working, do you want your significant other and your kids, especially in today's climate? That's a good question, though. That's a good question. Let me just get a couple out here. Raj Murtaugh says that's Dean Jenkins from Supply to Y. He is saying what's up. So Appreciate you for tuning in. Appreciate you. And we got a question here from Maurice Landrum. He says, I think it is imperative that field supervisors be trained to recognize what calls for service merits a response from behavioral science to ensure officers are mentally well. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And he also goes on, says another thing here. He says a prime example would be on an active shooter incident with mass casualties. Yep, definitely.
So
Definitely.
that's a good point. We can speak for our training. Usually at the end of that, a lot of people don't know, at the end of any major event, even if it's a child death or whatever, at least at our agency, they always give us the option to debrief. Number one, with those immediately supervising. Like if you just want to talk, we have peer counselors. The other thing is they give an opportunity for you to speak to a counselor. Now, a lot of officers don't take advantage of it because they don't trust the system. Like, I'm just being 100.
Yeah.
They don't
Yeah.
trust it. They don't believe that it's genuine. And part of that goes back to, am I being treated like a number before this incident? And is this just your protocol, or do you genuinely care? Have you been really checking in on me when I had bad days? And was I someone of value? Did you value me? I didn't have to be your best friend, but
Right.
did you treat me like I brought value to this organization? And so I think in places where you see value based, like we see an organization celebrate value based employment or relationship and things
Right.
like that, you will see a healthier organization. In a place where you're a number and you're going to be forgotten, and your position will be replaced before you die or quit, you're not going to see
Yeah.
a positive health, or you're just not going to see it. That
Yeah.
culture is toxic because there's no value in that, and there's no trust.
Right. Exactly. Bring up another question that someone just shot in. That was Dean Jenkins says, why do you think more people of color aren't stepping up and taking a job like we did? Taking the job like we did in law enforcement. Why do you think that is, Lyzzy?
So it's funny you would say that, because we had a podcast not too long ago, and the studies show that it's not that people of color don't want to. A lot of times, our background processes, our background
Roadblocks
investigators,
there. Yep.
uh, there are a lot of roadblocks to us getting through. We're applying a lot, actually. Um, Law enforcement in general has taken a hit, and so hiring has slowed down tremendously. It's not sexy. It's not a sexy career right
Nope.
now. We
Nope.
are we are in the fire, right? So a lot of,
We in
in
those
general, a lot
crosshairs
of
right
people
now.
don't. Yeah, everybody like, I ain't messing with them. And that's just kind of across the board. And you also have this millennial generation who, so most people in law enforcement joined it for a career. Millennials are like, I'm gonna work here maybe 3 or 4 years, and I'm about to do something else. I ain't nothing gonna get my life. I'm about being happy. That's kind of the mentality. Well, law enforcement isn't situated to succeed in that. The military is, but law enforcement is not. So we're also taking a hit for that. The other part is, I don't think law enforcement is actively recruiting in places where they can find us. If you look at the Explorer programs, you very rarely see children of color. In the recruitment places, it often was done by people who knew someone in law enforcement, right? So if you look now, our numbers are a little dwindled. So if I'm my best recruiter and there's only one of me, you ain't gonna get too many more of us,
Yeah.
right? And then they're not recruiting in spaces where you'll see people of color. They're recruiting in spaces that, like the monster truck, you know,
Right.
I'm gonna just
That
be
part.
100, right? You're
That
not
part.
going where we
That
at.
part.
So if you're
Yes.
if you want fish, you can't go to the desert and be like, well, none of the fish wanted to come swim. Well,
Yep.
we not in there. That's
Yeah.
not
Huh.
us. So I think it's a little bit of both, and I will not be remiss to say that also, um, law enforcement uh, is slow to embrace
Yeah.
a people of color for movement, right? If we can get hired and we can work the ground level, you might get a little bit up, but you're not really getting us up past mid management. So if I don't see anyone in places of influence, or if I don't see anyone that looks like me, that is making choices or has power or things like that, I'm not going
Why do I
somewhere
want
where
to
I
go
don't
there?
see myself
Yep.
represented. For what?
Yeah.
So, and the trend is, in law enforcement, they don't hire us when things are good. They send us to the problematic areas. They send us to the areas that are failing, or so we can become the fall guy for women and
Yep.
and chiefs of color, your opportunity comes when it's on fire and there's nothing but rubble. So if you win, they're
Yep.
like, see, we believed in you. If you lose, they're like, that's why you
Yep.
can't get it. So it's
Shout
kind
out
of like the
to
catch 22.
shout out to Chief Armstrong and a few others that have been on the podcast talking about that same
Thank you for
thing.
dropping that
Yep.
knowledge.
Yep. Definitely. Definitely. Let's see. We got a TJR here on YouTube says, should it be mandatory for an officer to be on school campuses? All right, let me talk about that one. Since I am
Yeah,
right
go
now
ahead, go ahead.
assigned assigned to a high school, um, should it be mandatory? I don't think it should be mandatory. I mean, the number one reason why we are there is for safety, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you just saw just what happened in Michigan the other day, right? That's why we're there. Now, there are some people, some districts, some communities that are trying to get officers that were there out of the schools for, political reasons or what have you. But a lot of them are asking for for those officers back now. Um, should it be mandatory? No, I think it should be highly encouraged. Another reason why I am there is, I get out there and I talk to these kids on the daily, and I let them know that, hey, I'm just like you, right? Not just the fact that I'm a black man, but I'm a guy who likes sports. I'm a guy who likes movies. I'm a guy who likes rap, you know, and R&B and all that sort of stuff. And it makes us relatable so that when we're out on the street, they're not they don't see us as just some robotic figure that they just see on TV and the movies and social media doing all sorts of dirt. They see us as a human being, and that's part of what the goal is, to having officers on campus. Should it be
I would
would
like
it be a
to
nice thing for
piggyback on there
yeah?
too.
Would it be a nice thing for all officers, for all school districts to have an officer on campus? I would say yes, but is it mandatory? I would say no.
I don't think it should be mandatory, but even piggybacking off of that, I think that one of the issues is that unfortunately there has been a culture where the SRO is the salt dog just trying to get out of patrol, as opposed to having people like you or others who really want to invest in making a difference. Because the school is an education part. So I am there as in a law enforcement capacity with the understanding that is to educate, to create safety for education, to create safety for them to grow and to
Yep.
learn. But education is the primary part. And so a lot of times you get officers there that are looking for the cush schedule, or they're looking, their reasoning for being there is not at the core of it. I'm building relationships so that number one, you have positive encounters with law enforcement. Two, you
Mm-hmm.
have a safe experience. But three, I also recognize you're here to learn, which means you're going to make mistakes. So my response, while it will be law enforcement driven, is going to come from a place of educating you so that you can be better and do better. And I think that that's where a lot of the frustration is. However, let's not get it twisted. Like I have someone who I love dearly who works in a school district, and it's one of the worst ones in her city, and um literally a stabbing, a shooting, fights all day every day, like. So if that's what she is breaking up, imagine your students who are trying to learn and are having to navigate this
Right.
without someone there who can actually do things to enforce safety or have the eye to see it before others. Because teachers need to be focusing on education, not on, is this the gun, is this going to turn into a stabbing or a shooting. The
Yep.
students need to be focusing on learning. And so having an officer there who has the right mindset could be phenomenal, could have a phenomenal impact. But I think it takes a culture of understanding why we're there.
Yeah. And then that's why some departments that are specializing, school district police departments, they hire those sorts of officers because that's
Mm-hmm.
what they specialize in. Hopefully, they get those sort of officers that want to do that daily. They're there to interact with the kids, make sure the school is safe, and that's what they're there to do. You got an agency like ours, municipal agency, where we've got different assignments. Uh, you know, just like you said, this officer may be trying to come off patrol for a cushy schedule, or maybe trying to do something later on in his career, and he sees this as a tick mark on on his resume, right? So,
Right.
yeah, you got to have the right officer in there for the right reason.
I got
Absolutely.
two questions here.
Go ahead.
So I actually got four. They're coming in via text. So
Yes. All
the
right.
first
All
one
right.
is it'll be two parts, and this is from Joshua. What should you do when an officer does something unprofessional and against the rules? How should you proceed? And if you think an officer did a great job, how do you get them recognized? How do you give them a good review?
All right. So I guess he's talking about as a civilian. What does a civilian do if
Yes.
they see an officer doing something wrong? And the second part of the question is the same thing. Contact the agency, lodge a complaint in the part of the officer doing something wrong, and lodge a commendation if they do something right. Um, I
Yes.
know in the past a lot of people think that these things go nowhere. But that's at least not in our agency. These things are being looked at, right? These things are being looked at. If you have a complaint, they will be investigated.
Every single
Yes,
time.
yes,
And so, and just to understand the complaint process, the complaint process is based on, is there a violation of policy? Is there a criminal violation?
right.
Um, and then is from there, it's determined whether or not there is something that can be done. It's also a lot of times they'll say, what is it that you're hoping for? And so sometimes the person will say, I want this person talked to, and they need to know XYZ. And it does happen. They get a notification,
Yeah,
hey, this is what happened, this is this, you need to do this, you need to do that. If there is a policy or a criminal violation, and there's a formal complaint, not I called and hung up, there has to be a formal written complaint. Once a formal written complaint is done, it goes through what is called an IA, which is an internal um,
affairs.
administrative review. Yeah, internal affairs. And so what happens at that point, it becomes a full-on investigation. The officer may or may not get representation, may or may not get an attorney. And then all of the evidence is collected, statements are collected, and it is reviewed. And then from that point, it's determined, was this criminal? Was this administrative? And you can have one and not the other, you can have both. And then from there, then the punitive process comes after that fact. After that part, if in fact it has been determined that there was a violation of policy.
Right, right. Now to piggyback on that, I'm sure the person who sent that question in would want to know: does the public or that person that filed that complaint, will they ever know the outcome of what happened?
Um, I believe that it can happen, but it depends because some discipline there's like officers' right,
Yep.
POBAR, Police Officer Bill of Rights. So it depends on that. That's usually a private matter, um, but I think you can know substantiated or unsubstantiated, and then whatever, but you may not necessarily know what. It's kind of like how they do in the schools. If it's a minor, you don't get to know the details of
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yep.
If it's criminal, that's different because then you're going to see the charges and you're going to see these things. But in terms of administratively, you may or may not know that. It
Right.
depends, I think, on the department's policy.
Yep. And then let's piggyback on that because we got another question here that we talked about earlier. Why don't bad cops stop bad cops from doing dirt?
Good question. Well,
Yes.
bad cops are not going to stop other bad cops, but good cops
Mm-hmm.
will. But I think that there's a misunderstanding that this always happens. So let me give a
Right.
caveat.
Yeah. Yeah. I read that wrong. Why don't good cops stop
Yeah,
bad
let me
cops? Yeah.
let me give a caveat. 99% of the time, officers who don't have integrity or who are unethical or immoral are not going to be doing behaviors in front of those who are.
That part.
And a lot of the time, those things are not happening in front of those who would hold them accountable, because they've made it very clear, you X plus Y is going to equal Z. And so it's
Right.
not happening there unless you have maybe a rookie who's very unsure and doesn't know. And again, maybe policies and things need to change so that people are more empowered to do what is now called duty to intervene. But bad cops are
Mm-hmm.
doing things in front of other bad cops, or they're doing them alone. And it then relies upon, unfortunately, those who encounter that or who witness that to speak up
Right.
and to then do what needs to be done so that the evidence and these cops can be held accountable for poor behavior. But
Yeah.
it's not going to
Because
happen in
usually,
front of good cops
yeah, because
because you're
usually,
not going to be okay with it.
Right, because these situations usually that we're talking about that usually come up, or officer that plants, that's doing bad traffic stops and plants drugs or something on a on a black motorist or something of that nature, or raping female uh, drivers or something like that.
They're by
Yeah,
themselves.
yeah, they by
They're
themselves.
by themselves,
Yep,
or people don't really know about it. Nobody knows about it until you know about it. You're like, what in the world?
yeah.
Or whatever
So
else. And it's a stain on us because it's like, yo,
right.
man, I ought to beat your butt.
Yeah, yeah,
We
exactly.
working
No
too
doubt,
hard
no
for this.
doubt,
What
no
are you
doubt.
doing? You
And
working
then
too hard.
what they're really talking about is, obviously George Floyd, what happened with Chauvin, and those other cops were there, and they just let it happen. A few of them were rookies, and they did, probably ask them, hey, let up. But for the most part, I think with us too, we wouldn't have let that happen, right? I mean, even if you
Nah, we
even
fighting. Wait,
even
what are
if
you
you
doing?
yeah, right, right. Even if you didn't think your partner was going over the edge, you would have still at least, hey, bro, let up real quick. You trying to help
I've
your
had
partner out first of all. You don't want to
situations
get
where I've
him
had
jammed
enough
up, right?
people, right? And you're like, yo, okay,
Yeah,
walk away. I got this. There's a way,
yeah,
there's always a way to diffuse it where
yes,
everybody can walk away with honor and integrity because we're all human, right? But in that case, they made the choice to be bad cops.
yep,
They made the choice not to be ethical, to be immoral, to have no integrity. So it is what it is for them, and they're now in that category, right? And
mm-hmm,
so it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And so you all have that, we have a choice to make, and it's kind of like you could be a good parent, a bad parent, a good teacher, a bad teacher. You are going to have to at some point draw a line in the sand because, like Dr. King said, it's the silence that'll speak
yeah,
volumes. I'll remember those who were silent in my suffering because you basically condoned it too.
right. That part right there. You got another one for us?
I got a question. Yes, I got a bunch. I didn't shot them out. Okay, so what training do police believe they could use more of, and how can we support that training? And that's from Warren Stewart Jr. What we got going? What training?
Uh,
What training?
what training could we use? I mean, there's all sorts of training out there, good training. Um, a lot of the times though, it's financially based why officers don't get to attend certain trainings. Um, training budgets are pretty thin in a lot of departments, and even in large
Manpower is
departments.
even thinner.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The manpower, that part. Sending an officer or two to a training class when they could use you out on the street. Um, sometimes is they got to pick and choose when they can do that. Our agency's been pretty good for the most part, but now that we're suffering just like everybody else with manpower issues, some of those trainings aren't allowed. But what particular training off the top of my head you got
So
one you can think of?
I got it. So I would say, because unfortunately, a lot of times, um, in the academy, when you go through the academy, you get like literally the ocean poured into this cup of everything. And they're trying to give you everything you need to get to the street. And then you got to learn a whole nother ocean once you get to the street, because the academy gives you kind of the foundation, but to apply that into real time and then to be able to navigate spirit of the law versus letter of the law. Spirit of the law is, this was the heart behind it. Letter of the law is like zero tolerance, boom, boom, boom. And so being able to navigate that. The issue with this is that a lot of times in law enforcement, your first encounter with people that are not your social norm, or you've never encountered cultures outside of this or anything like that, is when you're on the street making hard decisions,
Mm.
or policing and enforcing. And so if I were to say something, I would say real-time cultural competency. Like really invest in that time so you understand like how cultures operate and things like that, because um
How would that
folks
work?
being loud, but I'm just like having a real conversation, having somebody
Okay.
come in, and if you got to extend another week so that you understand how to navigate that. Like for me, when I first started, I really didn't know a lot about the Muslim community in terms of understanding cultures and norms. So trying to talk to a man, he ain't having it because I'm
Yep.
a woman, right? And so it's not a intentional disrespect to me. It is me being disrespectful because, so I need to divert to my male partners.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, my goal is to get a resolve, right?
Right.
But to have the competency to know how to navigate those situations. If you are in a community of African Americans and they talking and we joking or whatever, or we being loud, if we're complying, it's not a threat.
Right.
If you're used to your home being quiet and we say grace and that's it, there's nothing wrong with
Yep.
that. But because somebody else's home is not like that,
Mm-hmm.
then that doesn't make it a threat or doesn't make it wrong either. So I think,
Facts.
and that's the missing piece, is different isn't wrong. I don't need to assimilate in everything. You just need to celebrate my differences, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna celebrate yours and see value in it. And so I think that I would say more training on cultural competency. I also think that more training on de-escalation but self-defense tactics um, is huge too. I think we need more time. And our academy in California is 6 months, and I still feel like we could do that. But I think ongoing training where there's a time where you have not on your own personal time, but on company
Mm-hmm.
time, because I'm doing company training, you should allot time for me to do XYZ regularly, shooting, defensive tactics, regular time that's real time and helpful. Because a lot of people do things on their own time, but I don't want to take time for my family.
Yeah. Yep.
I
Yep.
want to be with my
I hear
family
you.
on my time. I don't want to be thinking about here. I don't want to think about all of the politics or the I don't want to do that. That's work time, and that's part of mental wellness, right? On company time, you allot time weekly or monthly for me to do things that are relevant to me being a productive and safe and a community servant. So I think that
Yeah.
those would be the ones that I would say.
And quarterly may not be enough, which is about as much as we get on it. So and
Right.
so then they expect you to
Outside
do
of your own time.
outside of your own time. Yeah, exactly, exactly. So monthly, yeah, I can definitely see that. Rolling right along, got another one here. Why do cops shoot to kill and not just stop? Why don't they just shoot that gun out of that guy's hand?
Yeah. So, very few officers are expert marksmen. And I don't know if you've ever tried to hit a moving target or if you've had your mom. I think mothers
Yeah.
are the only ones that can throw their shoe, their chancla, whatever else at a moving child
Oh yeah,
and
I know that
aim
in the
from
back of my head.
anticipation, but that you know what your child's gonna do. I'm not condoning child abuse. Don't throw your chanclas or your shoes, but y'all who
No,
grew
never.
up
You
like
would
I
never
grew up
condone
know
that.
what I'm talking about. Never. No, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it, boss. But um that is not scientific, and that's the movies, unfortunately. So outside of someone being stationary and a sharpshooter, that's not real time. That's not realistic. And just because I shoot the gun out of the hand, at the point that I determined that I am going to have to use my gun, I have now determined that the safest recourse is to terminate the threat.
Yes.
And when you are doing that, shooting someone in the leg, the shoulder, the hand, the arm, does not end their ability to be a threat. They
That
can
part.
still fight. They can still shoot. You all listen to Tupac. I got 9 shots. Da 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 da.
Right.
It didn't stop them from being able.
50.
It doesn't
Yep.
kill them. It doesn't
Yep.
stop it. So if I am choosing between myself and them because of the decisions that they have made, because I didn't wake up and come to your house and say I'm gonna shoot you. You woke up and chose violence.
Mm-hmm.
So at the point that this decision is being made, it is not to shoot out of the hand. I wish that that scientifically would work, but it does not, unfortunately.
Right. Right. So how we're trained in law enforcement, again, like Lyzzy said, is to stop the threat. And how you stop the threat is you aim. If you're gonna shoot, you want to hit the target, and you hit, yes, center mass first, and then once you get that on, the next is a headshot, because if you were shooting to protect yourself or someone else, because that person is doing something to try to harm
That is
somebody
that is
else, right?
that is
Yeah,
intentional to cause that. And so yeah, so we'll leave it there because I don't want
yeah,
nobody
yeah.
playing this video
Cen-
against me in
c-
court or
yeah.
something like that. But center mass, 2 shots and that goes back
Hey,
to also when they're like,
center
oh my
mass.
gosh, they did
Let me
all
get
these shots.
right
There
there,
we
center
go, center
mass. Yeah,
mass.
for real,
And
for
they
real.
said, oh my gosh, they shot this person 17 times. And I'm like, well, how many officers were there? Because if in our training in California is 2 to the chest, 1 to the head. So if me and Dell are there and we follow our training, that's 6 shots already.
Yes.
So you add another officer
But
in, that's 9.
right.
And so there's that. But again, it's perception and it is the
Right.
perceived threat.
Yes. But on that note again, playing devil's
And that's the
advocate,
minimum. That's the basic. That's the
both
minimum.
of us have to perceive that threat. I can't just be shooting just because you perceive that threat because you're shooting. You know what I mean? So
Right.
yeah, there's got to be some
He's got
liability
to
on that end.
respond based on his perception. I'm
Yes,
going to
everybody.
respond on my perception because maybe he's in a place where he doesn't see the gun and I do. So I'm firing. I'm going to communicate to him gun or knife or bomb, and he'll respond based on trusting what I'm telling him, right?
Yep.
But you better believe when it's all said and done, it better be there, or I'm going to be looking at criminal liability, or there better be something to show why I saw that.
That
What did
part
I
right
think?
there.
What was it that made me think or respond in this way?
Yep.
So
Maurice
I
Landrum
got
wanted to
another
respond
one.
to that. He said police officers are trained to stop the threat is based on the totality of the circumstances. Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I got another one. Do cops have to pass physical fitness tests annually? Clearly, you can see based on my physique, the answer is no.
Oh yeah, we do. Come on, look at it. Bam.
You got muscles over here.
Yeah. I got a couple. Hey, and hey, this is what 50 looks like. This. Yeah. Hey, hey, this is what 52. I'm gonna be 52 here in a couple weeks, so y'all know black don't crack. But
hey,
nonetheless, hey, but it depends on the agency. I know some agencies have a mandatory test every year, and if they don't pass that physical test, they get docked pay or they, what have you until they pass that test. Our agency, and I don't know if there are a lot of agencies that are like that. Maybe they'll incentivize you to pass this test. I know we were talking about that for a while, where if you pass the test, you will get additional time off, paid time off,
like
vacation time, vacation hours added to your bank. But what do you think? Should it be mandatory?
So I have mixed feelings about it. And the reason why is because in the course of our duty, you get injured. And so what I did when I first started 17 years ago, I can't do now. I can do what I need to maintain safety. So I think that the physical test becomes an issue because then what happens if I get injured doing the test? Right? Then now what? Now am I a liability? Are y'all paying for this bill? And did you create more issues? So I don't think it should be. I think that there is a concern when you do become physically out of shape or whatever else.
Absolutely.
The kind of thing is like you got to live with not being able to help your partner.
Yeah, that part.
But I do know that there are agencies that require yearly out of state. I know there are a few agencies that do require yearly physical evals, and the agencies that have where you are also a firefighter and an officer, sometimes they require that too.
Okay.
But I don't want it required because I'm tired.
No. Right. But then that's when the incentivation comes in. You incentivize, you give them extra pay or extra hours in their bank, if they pass this test. And it'll be on a sliding scale based on your age too. They don't expect it.
I'm gonna need days off too afterwards because the way my body's gonna hurt after push-ups, sit-ups, and running and all that. I'm gonna need days off and some vacation hours and a car.
Trust. I'm in halfway decent shape, but I remember a couple years ago, I was running this race with some explorers, and these explorers were like 17, 18 years old, and hey, I kept up with them. However, afterwards, good Lord.
Like you had been on Calvary, huh? 3 days later.
That's why later on in life, if you work a patrol and you ain't trying to chase no dude, tagging on a wall or something, nah, let them young bucks handle that. So,
man.
All right, I got one last one here. We were talking about this as a passenger in a vehicle that is traffic stopped. Do you have to stay on that stop? Do you have to remain there while the officer's talking to the driver?
Okay.
Well, at least here in California, the answer is no. Um, yeah, you don't have to unless that officer is detaining you as well, which
Hmm.
may be the case. So it would be best if you can ask that officer because again, you don't just want to jump out, makes sudden moves and all that sort of stuff too, right? So, but
Right.
generally, no, you do not have to stay. What do you guys say about that?
So I agree. You do not have to stay. I would not recommend you jumping out and just taking off because now that looks suspicious to me.
Yeah.
At the point that the officer contacts, so an officer is supposed to contact you, identify themselves, identify the reason for the stop, and then what usually should happen is they ask the driver, does that driver have identity? Does they have proof, a driver's license or whatever else, and things like that, and then give directives as to what they want the driver to do. At that point, they may or may not ask the passengers, do you all have identification? The passengers can choose. In California, you can choose to identify yourself or not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then at that point, that is when I would say, hey, sir, am I free to go? They may say yes or no. Now, if they say no and you have issue with it, this is not the time to argue.
This is not
That's
the
not what I
time.
would recommend. What I would say is, okay, well, I've asked to leave and leave it at that. You can document it. You can file the complaint later if you
Ah,
feel that they have violated your civil rights. But the goal is to be safe and to not create issues. I'm not telling you that you should feel like, you giving up your rights. No, if someone violates your rights, you have every right to then pursue the rectification of that, but do it in a way that's safe for you, your passengers, your friends that are in the car. Don't There's no need to escalate a situation, and you always have the right to ask for a supervisor to respond.
facts.
If you are
Yes.
concerned, say no problem, I would like a supervisor to respond, please, and I want to speak to a supervisor.
Yes.
And then when the
Always
supervisor gets
remain.
there, say,
Yes.
hey, he said he wasn't detaining me, I want to leave. And he told me no, I don't, this is a violation of my right.
Yes.
I want to know why I'm being detained,
And there
because
there
he
may
said
be
he
things
wasn't.
there may be things at play that you necessarily don't know as a passenger. So you got to keep those things in mind too. But
Right.
generally, you as a passenger don't have to stay, but do it safely. And if you're
And
denied,
and ask
yeah,
questions.
yeah, ask questions. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with asking questions. Again, it comes back to what we were talking about earlier. How you ask those questions. Um, Again, the officer should remain calm and professional at all times too. Just because
Right.
you say, "Hey, why you stopping me?" That doesn't mean that officer has a right to take you down just because you're loud about it. And so yeah, there's that balance in that. Absolutely. Yep. All right, you got one more for us?
Let's see here. I do. Oh, we got a shout out from Miss Allison Jackson from Chi-Town. Love you, love you, love
Hey,
you.
Miss
Hey, hey.
Allison. Hey.
And then let's see here. So it says, do police appear in front of the same judges and jurors as the general public?
Meaning what, on a case or
So I guess we can answer it from a case, or if they end up becoming suspects, and then also, I, I don't know.
yeah,
So
right, right.
I guess we'll answer it as if the officer is in trouble, from the perspective of
Okay,
if the
yeah.
officer gets in trouble. So you go ahead, Deb. What you got?
Yeah. Um yes,
You
yes,
answer
they
first.
would they would fall in the same jurors. Well, it wouldn't be the same jury every time, but the same judges as the general public. Say like if I did a assault, if I assaulted somebody, and then Johnny up the street assaulted somebody, and I got arrested, and he got arrested on two separate cases, we could both end up in the same courtroom. I guess his question there, his concern there is that I have been in front of that judge as an officer multiple times, and that judge may have a relationship with me, and now that judge may favor my case because we have a relationship. Um,
Right.
in that case, the prosecutor, they can ask for a venue change, out of that courtroom or out of that whole jurisdiction. So it comes on a case by case basis. But yes, if I'm arrested, just like the dude up the street, we can both come in front of the same judge.
And I think also with the jurors, it should be our peers. So more than likely, if it's a case that is going to require jurors, it will be not only the public we serve, but maybe an officer also, or someone who was a former officer, so they can kind of see both sides of things, to have someone kind of rally or be able to advocate from the experience or the understanding of what I may or may not have done. So we're not above the law.
No, we are not.
I
We
know
are
what
not.
the news says and things like that, but I can give you a quite a long list of folks who have had to appear to judges and jury because of decisions that have cost them and cost others. Because anytime
Yeah.
we violate that, it devastates and it tarnishes our relationship with our community when
Trust.
we're trying to serve.
Yes. And trust, a lot of those judges, they don't care what we do anyway. Even if we coming in there as an officer, they want that courtroom
Right and
Yes, they
tight.
want it right. Yep. So, a lot of those judges don't worry about that. I mean, there's some cool judges, but they are professional, and if we in their courtroom on the other side of the bench, then then they will let us have it. So just like anyone else. Yeah.
Yes.
This was fun. I like this. We need to do more of
Thank you
this.
all.
Yes, we need to
Love,
do more
love,
of this.
love.
We appreciate the questions
Please.
you guys sent in on here. You sent in on social media, and that you text to us, and we got these out here. I appreciate that. This is good. We're gonna do this again. I love this. I love
Yes, we
this.
will.
Yes, whatever questions you guys had, hey, feel free to leave them in the comments on the replay here. If you got some more questions, and I'll get on there and we'll answer those as well. Let's do this again. This was fun.
Yes, let's do it.
Yes, yes. All right. So, real quick, I want to give some programming notes here. We are going to be. Let me pull this up here. I'm going to be out of town, but you will still be able to get some black and blue because I am going to Florida. That's right. I'm going to the Sunshine
Woo
State.
woo.
Yeah. Let me take that down and check me out on Wednesday, December 15th at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 Pacific. I'm going to be sitting down with some officers of Riviera Beach PD, and we are going to have a good conversation about what they do in their community policing unit
You're
during the
gonna be in your black and
holidays.
blue
I'm going to be, this is
bikini.
going to be, this is, ain't going to be no bikini. Ain't gonna, only
Your black and blue
because
bikini.
yeah, I don't know what the weather is gonna be like, so
Shimmy.
it may be too cold, but be sure to check out
It's
Black and Blue
always
Street
warm in
Life.
Florida.
It's all right. I haven't been to South Florida, so I'll take your word for that. But stay tuned for that, and stay tuned for other episodes, of the recorded podcast and more lives like this. Because Lyzzy's always jet setting, but whenever I can catch her when she when she here in town,
He be beating me. He be beating
yes,
me out.
yes. Whatever she here in town, we will get these still together. So I appreciate everybody, and yeah, all right, I love that. What you think about this
Dope.
episode? Yeah, this is
I
this
thought
is
it
real
was
dope.
fun. I had a whole
Yes.
bunch more questions. I'm not asking this.
Yeah, we still here. We closing this out, but yes, ladies and gentlemen, please hit the replay, hit the like, share, and subscribe on this, and man, that's what we do. Black and blue.
That's what we do. We like to keep it 100, and we appreciate you all supporting us in this. We want to build relationships because while we're officers, we are still your friends. We are your family.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the same community, and we really believe in making it better. So,
Yes.
thank you
All
for
right.
keeping us accountable. We love y'all. Thank you for joining us.
Yes. My name is Dale. That's Lyzzy right
My name's
there.
Elizabeth.
Yes. Black and Blue Live. We are out. Peace.